And hello again, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's presentation on using resistance bands to exercise your full upper body and core for paraplegics. My name is Franklin. I'm one of the two co-founders of NorCal SCI, also known as the Northern California Spinal Cord Injury Foundation. Excited to get Rachel started on her presentation. She did one on Tuesday night for the quadriplegic community, and you are in store for some incredible sort of suggestions and recommendations on how to leverage something as simple as resistance bands to maintain the integrity of your body at home. So a few housekeeping items as normal. Everyone has been muted in order to eliminate any background distractions. We will have a brief Q&A session towards the end. And so I'm going to ask as we get closer for anyone that has questions to feed them to me through the chat feature on their screen. These presentations, as always, are brought to us or brought to you thanks to a generous grant that we received from the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. So we're grateful to them. And finally, as always, we are recording tonight's presentation, and that way, if you need to jump off the call at any time, I know some of you are on the East Coast, a couple of people from other parts of the world, you will be rest assured that tomorrow morning in your inbox, there will be a copy of the recording of tonight's presentation. And actually, we will be including the one for quadriplegics as well. One never knows who you may come in contact with who didn't know about these presentations. So we'll give you the benefit of having links to both recordings, and that way you could use them accordingly. So without further ado, let me introduce Rachel Kahn, who is a nationally certified Pilates teacher, a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and a movement teacher specializing in working with people with neurological deficits, especially spinal cord injuries. She's currently pursuing her license for massage therapy, and I am thrilled that she's back again 2 nights in 1 week. That's a lot of work. Rachel, thanks for doing that, and welcome, and take it away.
Awesome. All righty. Hi, everybody. Welcome. And as always, thank you to NorCal SCI and the Christopher Reeve Foundation for sponsoring and hosting these workshops. These are some of my favorite things to do in the month, the educational component. All righty. I'm going to jump right in and share my screen with you all. So just give me 1 second here. All right. Okay, great. So yes, tonight we've got another resistance band class. It's possible those of you join me Tuesday. It's going to look a little different, kind of a similar intro and a little different with the class. I just want to give a heads up. For those of you that maybe are not familiar with me, I am an able-bodied individual and ambulatory. I had a very generous client loan me their wheelchair for tonight to show you how to do some of these resistance band movements, working around a wheelchair, working with some of the safety features and making sure that everything is aligned and good to go. Okay, so why resistance bands? They are easy to use and they're super adjustable. I'm going to go ahead and actually just show you the set that I'm using right now. It's the same one that Franklin sent in his link. The brand is S as in Sarah, B as in boy, SB Socks. It is my favorite brand of resistance bands, and probably the best one out there in my opinion. I thought it was $22, but I looked it up the other day and it's actually $19. So I don't know if they bumped their price down. I should be getting a commission at this point. Anyway, the set comes with 5 TheraBands. I'm just going to hold these up for you all. I'm holding up 4 right now. The 5th is attached to the wall. And they all have different pounds on them. So we've got a 10 pound, which is the yellow. I'm going to be using that today. And the blue, which is a 20 pound. These 2 bands are the most universal. This is where I work with most of my clients, the 10 pound and the 20 pound band. It gets heavier. We've got a 30 pound being, or sorry, 50 pound being the red one. And a 40 pound being the black one. And I think I'm missing 30 for the green one. What's really nice about this kit is that there's carabiners on the ends of all of these bands, which might seem silly, but if you're the kind of person that's going to be switching out bands often with these exercises, putting your handles onto one band and then onto another band, having the carabiners at the end can be really useful. Carabiners are also some of my favorite handy tools. I feel like they just fix any problem you could ever have. The kit also comes with 2 ankle or elbow cuffs. These are the cuffs I was using for Tuesday night's class. They're nice and padded on the inside. They've got a hook on the outside for the carabiners. So high quality cuff pads there. It also comes with a door stopper. I'm just going to show you this setup now. Let me untangle myself. Okay, so you can see here I've got a door stopper and shoved into the door. This is, make sure you can see this. This is where you open the door. So it's actually, my door stopper is shoved into the crease of the door. This is because I live in an older apartment and I don't trust this side of the door. It's sometimes open when a breeze comes through. So I have my door anchor in that side of the door. If you have more modern doors, it also would be safe. You just want to make sure it's nice and secure. You would be able to do it on this side of the door, but for safety purposes, so I don't get whacked by a band tonight, I've got it in that corner. So you've got the door stopper, which is really nice because if I open this door, I can slide this up and down as high or as low as I want it. So whether you're doing an arm series, whether you're doing these exercises tonight from a standing position, switching your seated position, doing low to high or high to low movements, which I'm going to show you later, that can be a really nice feature because you can just slide it up and down. And then lastly, it comes with a nice set of handles. They're padded, they're comfortable. For people with like hypersensitive hands or something like that, these are really nice. Okay, let me bring you back up here. Okay. Great. Okay, so why else resistance bands? This is a really accessible, for only $19, $19.99. This is a really accessible way to get a full upper body, meaning we're going to hit chest, we're going to hit shoulders, biceps, triceps, back, abdominals, deeper core, especially working some of the posture work. We're working your entire upper body. It can also be an entire lower body workout as well. I'm going to show you about maybe 10 of those tonight. Half are going to be from standing, half are going to be from on the ground for those of you that are able to transfer down onto the ground. So it's really a nice way to get a full body workout or a full upper body workout. Yes, so all of this work challenges your seated alignment and your posture. I'm not going to talk too much about posture tonight. I've talked about it in a couple of my prior workshops with NorCal SCI, so you can check those out if you want. But just being really mindful that as you do all of the exercises, we're assuming that you're coming into the most aligned posture your body can come into. If that means you need to use props, maybe that means putting a towel, a rolled up towel in the small of your back, or putting a foam roller going from in a vertical position going from head to tail, so it will open up your chest more. If that means propping something under one side of your pelvis because your pelvis feels a little lopsided, those are all really good options. That's not cheating. It's helping you come into more of an aligned posture so we can do some of these movements. Remember, your body, being your muscles, your nerves, your connective tissue, are going to respond better and be able to connect better when you're in a more aligned position. When we're in a slumped position and the tail is tucked under us, I want you to think of your nerves as being in like a traffic jam, okay? So we're not going to get many signals going through the fascia or the nerves when we're in a bad position. But if we can use some props to bring ourselves into a proper position, more things can work the way that they're supposed to work. It's cheap, it's $19, it's somewhat accessible. And then any of these exercises can be done single arm and single leg if you're working the legs. So if you've got one side of your body that is significantly more affected, you can split up the exercises, you can focus more on the less dominant side for whatever side you're doing. Okay, make sure I didn't miss anything there. Okay, so how is getting a full upper body workout? It might seem like a lot of the movements we're going to do tonight are just shoulders, because those are the things that are going to be moving, opening, closing, pushing, pulling. The way that we're going to connect this to the rest of the body, being the abdominals and the core, is through these myofascial meridians. For those of you that have been taking my workshops for a while, this slide is hopefully very, very familiar by now. And for those of you that are just joining, I'm gonna walk you through it. So myofascial meridians is just a really fancy word for everything in the body is connected. We've got bands of connective tissue that encase our muscles in certain patterns going throughout the body. So for example, you see the spiral line on the left, which is one of my favorite and most accessible lines when we're talking about connecting the arms to the trunk. So you'll see that that line of tissue creates an X going down the front of the body. You'll likewise see on the back side, you have an X being your back functional line that does a really similar, that is a similar pattern. So the idea of this is that we're using your lats, we're using your arms and some of these pulling muscles to access connective tissue, nerves, and muscles, being myofascia, down the rest of the body. Okay, so this is a good way to work the abdominals, the obliques, and then it's a really good way when we're working your posture, your nice posture, and when we're working your breath work. It's a nice way then to connect to those deeper core muscles that are going to be stabilizing you the entire time that you're doing this arm series. So just keeping that in mind, everything is connected, trying to pull into as good of a posture as you can, and then working from there. That's what's going to access the deeper core muscles and everything working out superficially from there. Okay. So I'm going to just show you this slide briefly for a minute here, talk you through it, and then I'm going to show you all of these exercises. We're going to move somewhat quickly because, as you can see, we have a lot to get through. If you want to snap a picture of this, go for it. I always get a question somewhere at the end of the session of how many reps, how many sets, how many times a week. With a lot of these movements, you're going to be doing anywhere, and this is a really broad range, and this totally depends on the goal of your movement session. It will look different for everybody, and even for one person, it might look very different one day compared to the next day. Maybe one day you want to get in a little bit more cardio, you want to get the heart rate up, so you're doing the movements a little bit faster. Whereas the next day, you want to do maybe a heavier resistance band, and you want to go slower, and you want to go fewer repetitions. All in all, a very, very general rule is to do anywhere from about 8 to maybe 25 repetitions of each exercise. You can then superset these so that you're not having to, face towards the anchor. So when I say facing sideways, facing forward, I'm talking in reference to the band, in reference to that anchor point in your door, so that you're not having to go one set facing forward, one set facing back, and switching back and forth. You can do all of the exercises facing toward the anchor, all of the exercises facing away from the anchor, all of the exercises facing sideways. But it doesn't mean that if you want to keep that session fluidly moving, you can still, it's what we call superset your repetitions, your sets. So you might do one set of rows, and instead of breaking and putting the bands down and hanging out for 30 seconds or a minute, you can superset that with something else. You can grab a set of weights, you can go into an overhead press, you can do some shoulder internal external rotation, which I'm going to show you at the end of the session. You can work on breath work, you can work on rotation, you can superset these with anything that you want to do. You can superset it with eye exercises or vestibular exercises. See my prior workshop for that. You can superset it with hands and feet exercises. Stay tuned. That's probably going to be my next workshop. So there's a lot of ways where you can make a session like this as long or as short as you want. But also in between each exercise, you can add in an additional exercise. So just some ideas there for you. And then one more safety thing before I actually, no, I'm going to shut the PowerPoint down here. Okay, one more safety thing, and the wheelchair that I am borrowing does not have anti-tippers. Exit out of this. It doesn't have anti-tippers, but if your chair has anti-tippers, I highly encourage you to use those if you're feeling nervous, or to have somebody present, especially when we're doing some of the exercises facing away from the anchor. And I'm going to explain that soon. So if you're not already in a position where you're going to join me, if you're not joining me for the workout, no worries. Go in and bring yourself into a position where you can join me if you'd like to join. You want that anchor point to be at about shoulder height. Let's make sure I've got everything in the frame here. Okay. You want that anchor point to be at shoulder height. Okay, so you're going to grab the handles, and I want you to pull back to a place where you feel like you're kind of fighting the band, okay? This will be different for everybody, but just coming back to a good place there. Just going to expand my notes so I don't leave anything out here. If you are doing this tonight and you'd like to set up your camera so that I can see you doing these, I can be giving you some feedback. So feel free to set yourself up in a good place, and I'll kind of be poking my head and seeing how you all are doing. Okay, so wheels are locked. Make sure I'm in frame here. Okay, and we're going to start with the row, and I'm actually going to back up a little bit more because I'm a little close. Okay, so bring yourself into a good posture. Remember, you can use that towel in the rolled up part of your low back if you'd like. There's a couple ways that we're going to do this row, actually 3 to be exact. So we're going to start with thumbs facing up, palms facing in. You're going to exhale. You're keeping the elbows close to your ribs. You're going to exhale to pull the elbows back. So my elbows come to about a 90-degree position. Don't go too much further than that. In fact, you might not be able to because you might hit your chair. Or else the shoulder starts to tip forward. Okay, so you can see when I pull a little bit more, my shoulder tips forward and I lose the integrity of that area. So we're just exhaling to pull back and inhaling back to the center. As I talk you through all of these exercises, I'm just going to list the primary muscles that are moving that area and the primary fascial lines that are moving that area. Okay, so we've got mid and lower trap working, we've got biceps working, and we've got rhomboids primarily working. This is working back line and spiral line. Okay, so spiral is one of the ones I showed you, connecting the arms to the rib cage, to the torso. We can then switch that to what I call a high row. So you're going to pivot almost like you've got chicken wings on. My palms are facing down towards the floor now. And I'm going to pull my elbows back. My elbows stay at the height of my shoulders the whole time. We're working the same areas, same lines. We're just working technically different fibers of those muscles. It's a really subtle difference, but it's a nice change. Yeah, and I'm just going to watch people doing this one. That looks pretty good. Making sure, as long as you don't have shoulder problems, those elbows can stay at the height of the shoulders the whole time. Palms are facing down. So my forearms stay parallel with the floor. Yeah. And again, you're doing somewhere from 8 to 25. Okay. Next, we're coming to a row with a rotation. So holding on to the handles, we're just going to do one at a time. So starting maybe with the left side, I'm going to row that left arm back. My right arm is just hanging out, stabilizing the other side of the resistance band. And then I'm gonna rotate and I'm gonna look over that left shoulder. I'm rotating from my rib cage, I'm rotating from my head and my neck. Hold that position. I want you to, with your eyeballs, your actual eyeballs, I want you to see what the farthest thing behind you is. It should feel like you're straining your eyes here. That will help you get a little bit more range of motion in that rotation, and then slowly release back to the center. Yeah, and doing the other side, rowing that right arm back. Keep that elbow close to the ribs or close to your chair. Rotate, look over the right shoulder. What's the furthest thing on the wall behind you that you can see? And then coming back to the center. And you're just going to be alternating right, left, right, left. Okay. You can play with the breath here. If you're pulling, using the band, I'd recommend doing an exhale to rotate and an inhale to center. Exhale, rotate, inhale, center. If you want to make that a little bit more cardio based, meaning maybe you want to increase the heart rate, you want to get blood pumping a little bit more, you're just going to make that a little bit quicker. Notice my ribs are still rotating, okay? But I'm moving quicker. I would be out of breath here if I kept doing this for another 30 seconds or a minute. But what's really nice about this is we're pulling instead of pushing. For all of these exercises that are listed as facing anchor, these are the ones that I'm really emphasizing. These are the really important ones, especially because they work the whole back side of your body. They work spiral and back line. What do we look like most of the day? We're in this forward flex position. We're on a computer, we're on a phone, we're on the TV, we're doing something we're driving, we're doing something in front of us. Anything that opens up the chest, opens up the collarbones, and works the back line is going to be where you'll want to spend, I would say, more of your time. Okay. We're going to face the other direction and do the same set of exercises facing the other way. But this way, I'm emphasizing because we're working all of those muscles of your back that rarely get worked during your day-to-day movements. Okay, so layering on, we're going to add a tricep press with this. We're going to do this in two ways. You're first going to find that row back, okay? Keep the palms facing in, and then you're going to extend the arms so that your arms are straight down by your side. Come back to that row position, but keep that your arms pulled back, and then extend. So we're just working on the triceps, straightening the elbows, and bending, straightening and bending. Notice my upper arm doesn't move at all, okay? It's just my lower arm and my hands, and my triceps are already tired. Yeah. Yeah, and I see some people doing that. Make sure we've got shoulders down and back. There we go. Yeah. Saw a couple people. With the tendency with these is the shoulders start to creep up towards the ears. So just being mindful that you're not overdoing that elevation. One more way to do this. The tricep is named tri because it's a muscle with three heads. We work another part of that tricep. I won't get too technical, but we work another part of that tricep when we face the palms forward. So you're keeping that same row position, and I'm extending my arms, but my palms are facing forward. You might feel that a little bit more towards the inside of your tricep, the inside of your arm. If you don't feel a difference, no worries, but this is a good way to switch it up and access a slightly different part of your tricep. Yeah, and I see some people doing that. So just simply playing with the hand position can tweak each exercise. Okay, coming to so straight arm extension. So similar to what we just did, we're just going to connect those movements. So now my arms stay straight the whole time, and I come into a full straight arm extension, just meaning I'm pulling those arms completely back instead of a tricep press. So my elbows stay straight the whole time. Exhale to pull, inhale, release. I want you to keep doing that. I'm just going to talk you through this. Every time you do these exercises, no matter which one you're doing, being mindful that you're not letting the band snap your arms back to the center. You control the band. Don't let the band control you. Okay? You control the band the whole way in and the whole way out. Coming to a reverse fly. So I'm going to keep palms facing in. I have a slight bend in my elbows here. I'm going to open my arms out wide like I'm about to give someone a big hug, and then slowly come back to the center. Open wide, close back to the center. Yes, exactly. Yeah. That looks really good, everybody. We're working the same area. Mid-low trap, rhomboids, triceps are working a little bit here. Deltoids are working a little bit, that muscle on the top of your shoulder. Back line, spiral line. Okay, so really similar areas that I had listed before. Yeah. Okay, similar to that, so just changing the angle. You're going to do more of an overhead fly. My arms might go out of the frame, but you get the point. So my palms are facing down, and then as I pull back, my palms face forward. So I'm just bringing my arms more to an overhead Y position, Y being the letter Y. It's really easy for this one for the shoulders to start to creep up towards the shoulders. So just a reminder to keep those shoulders down, even as the arms come overhead. We don't want that excessive elevation there. If this is hard for you, you might have to wheel yourself back in a little bit. If you find you can only pull your arms back a few inches, just wheel yourself closer to the anchor. Or you might have to switch the band out. Okay, and then coming into a diagonal fly. So really similarly, one arm comes up, the other arm comes down. My elbow is totally straight here. And then I come back to the center. And we're going to switch the direction. Other arm goes up, other arm goes down. Back to the center and switch. My palms stay facing forward the whole time with this one. This helps keeps the shoulder more in a neutral position. It protects the shoulder so that we're not impinging any of those areas on the top of the shoulder complex. Yeah, and I see people doing that. And then just also as a reminder, if an overhead arm raise is not in the books for you from prior shoulder issues and whatnot, then just don't go quite as high. We can still do all of these movements with the arms not going overhead. And if you do have shoulder issues, take this really slow. Do a good shoulder prehab warm up in the beginning, maybe with some internal external rotation, and then moving from there. Yes, oh good, I'm glad I included this one. So this next one is lat pull down. What I could do is I could take the anchor and I could slide it up all the way to the top of the door. If you don't want to do that, it's hard to reach and you don't really want to change your position. All I'm going to do is I'm going to wheel myself back a little bit more. Sure, I'm still in the frame. And I'm going to lean forward a little bit so that my arms are a little bit more in an overhead position. I probably could have wheeled back a little bit more, but you get the idea. And then I'm going to pull the elbows back, bent elbows. And I'm trying to flatten out my upper back as much as I can. So notice this position, it's kind of like a horizontal or a diagonal lat pull down. Okay, so emulating, the machines that maybe you used to use at the gym back when gyms were open. But we're just bringing this more to a leaning forward position, really targeting the lats, pulling the elbows close in towards the ribs. Yeah, I'm just going to watch people do this one because sometimes the angle with this can be tricky. And I'm also going to shed a layer here. Yeah, Dorian, see if you can flatten your upper back a little bit more. There you go, there you go, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, good. Yeah, so you're trying to keep your back flat and tail lifted. Okay, so really trying to keep that lift there. That looks great. Okay, moving to some circles and snow angels. We're working the same areas that I listed to you before. I'm going to move forward so I'm more in the frame here. Okay. So you're going to pull the arms back so you're in a fly. You're going to hold right there, and then you're going to add a snow angel. So imagining you were lying down in the snow, or a beach angel if you're more of a beach person. Okay, arms coming up, arms coming down, but you're keeping tension on that TheraBand the whole time. I just want to give one reminder here, because it's really easy when we do exercises facing the anchor for the ribs to sometimes flare if we lose our connection to our upper abdominals. So just being mindful that if you need support in the back, you have it, but we're not overarching the back and flaring the ribs. Okay, so that won't apply to everybody, but just something to keep in mind if you flare your ribs to get these movements. And then likewise, we can bring that snow angel more into a full circle, like we're drawing a circle from the side to the front of our body. My palms are facing forward or inward the whole time. Again, the direction of the palms is just to help keep that shoulder neutral. And we can go both directions. So now I'm going up, out to the side, down, in front. Up, out to the side, down, in front. Yeah. Nice, everybody. That looks good. Awesome. That's the last one for... Let me just make sure. My eyes are playing tricks on me. That's the last one for facing forward. I'm going to do some of the standing ones at the very end just to make these transitions easier. So now I'm going to have you go ahead and transition so that you are facing away from the anchor. If you need to let go of the bands and do it that way, you can do it that way. I like to just keep my handles on my wrists. Do a turn. You're going to have to bring that one arm up and over to the other side. And then you want to line yourself up. And I'm going to move the camera in just a sec. You want to line yourself up so that your anchor is directly lined up with about the center of your back, still at shoulder height. Okay, I'm just going to slightly move you here so you have a better angle of me. Okay. Great. Okay, so for this series, facing away. Cutting off my head here. Okay, for the series facing away, I want you to notice that you're doing the exact same series, but we're just facing away from the anchor. The names are slightly different. It's all the same movements. Now that we're facing away, a couple things. If you need anti-tippers or you need something to stabilize behind you, put those on. Because if the weight is too heavy, I'm going to tip backwards. Okay, just wanted to make sure I actually wasn't going to tip backwards. Do that test first and foremost if you need to. Secondly, whenever we're doing anything here, the tendency is going to be to round the upper back. Okay, there is one exercise where I'll have you do a rounded upper back. Otherwise, I want you lifted. Again, if you need something in the small of your back, but when we're doing all of these exercises, trying to lift the collarbones, lift the chest, instead of collapsing the back into the chair. That's going to be the hardest part here. It doesn't take much resistance to make this movement really challenging. Okay, so you might need to wheel yourself closer to the anchor. Okay, we're starting with serve a tray, making sure I'm in a good position. Okay, so palms are facing up, elbows are tucked in. I'm going to push that band away from me. I always forget to say this. If you've got sensitive skin or skin-prone issues, you might want to wear a long sleeve or something of that sort, because if it starts to bug you under the armpit or along the arm, you just want to be mindful of that. Okay, you're exhaling to serve that tray forward and inhaling back in. Remember, you control the bands don't control you. For most of these movements, yeah, keep moving with me if you're doing the exercise. For most of these movements where we're facing away from the anchor, we're working more of the front line of your body. So more of your superficial abdominals going straight down the center, also known as that six pack of abs. You're working the front of your neck. You're working the tops of your hips, quads and hip flexors. That's all the front line because you're trying to keep yourself in this lifted forward position. And then just another reminder to make sure that head doesn't start to drift forward, okay? So from there, we're gonna hold the arms out straight, let the arms drift back, keeping the elbows straight the whole time, and then exhale, pull forward. Inhale back, and exhale forward. The hardest part about doing it from the anchor, in my opinion, is getting yourself in a good position where the band isn't getting too much in a way, where you're at a good angle, where the band isn't cutting off any circulation anywhere. But once you get into this nice position, it's really easy to just come right into a flow here. Yeah, and that looks really good. We're gonna bring that a little bit higher. So I was just going to shoulder height. Now I'm gonna come up, if I can, up to that overhead Y position. As the arms get overhead, notice it wants to pull you back more. Okay, so I want you fighting into that using your abdominals and then coming back down. Exhale up, inhale down. I'm turning my palms halfway so that my palms stay facing forward. So when I get to shoulder height, I actually turn my palms so that when my arms come overhead, my palms are facing forward. Again, it's just a nice neutral way to keep the shoulders. If you don't turn the arms, it's not the end of the world. You can also face the palms in the whole time. But I'm just making these easy for you today to keep your shoulder in a good position. We can bring that right into circles. So you're coming up overhead, down to the side, and in front. Ooh, getting caught. In front, out to the side, and forward. You might need to adjust your arms. Maybe you can't squeeze the arms in all the way like me because I keep getting caught on that handle. Yeah, and then you would switch directions and go the opposite way. Up, in front, down, and open. Yeah, good. Making sure to keep the palms facing forward the whole time. There you go, there you go. Yeah, Charlotte, that was a good adjustment. Yeah. Okay, likewise, we can do snow angels. Now we're just facing forward. We're working all the same areas. Front line primarily. Definitely deep front line, which is your deep core muscles. You can see my prior workshop that I did on that one. We're working chest. We're working front of the deltoids. We're working your pecs, your biceps, your tri. We're working everything through this facing away from the anchor. Okay, coming into chest fly, so palms facing forward / inward. Have a soft bend in the elbows. Exhale to close, inhale to open. Exhale, close, inhale, open. Are your shoulders down and back? Are you in a seated, neutral-ish position with that pelvis and spine? Yeah, and you would go on with that one. Just as we did the row with rotation facing the anchor, we're going to do a punch with a rotation facing away. Remember, I want you rotating from your rib cage. So I'm trying to reach that arm as far forward as I can. Reach that arm as far forward as I can. You might have to play with the angles. Maybe you keep the hands wider so that band doesn't cut into you. But I want you really trying to get that rotation. There we go. There we go. Yeah. Likewise, with rowing facing the other way, if we want to make that a little bit faster, maybe I don't reach quite as far, but now it almost becomes more like a cardio workout, emulating some of those hand machines that you might see at a gym. Yeah, exactly. So what's your goal for the session? and then you plan the exercises accordingly. Okay, coming to diagonal chest fly. So same thing we did facing back, one arm forward, one arm down, sorry, one arm up, one arm down. I close the arms together. I switch the arms, the other arm goes down, the other arm goes up. So my arms always stay at a diagonal, and I'm just rotating and switching left arm high and then right arm high. Yeah. Inhale to open, exhale, close. Inhale, open, exhale, close. Okay, last one like this. This is optional. This might not be for everybody, and it certainly depends on your setup. But keeping the hands overhead, in fact, you can also do tricep presses here. This is called skull crusher. I didn't include this on the band, but this is an option for you. It's a bit more advanced. It requires some more abdominal strength, but this is a really good one. You're gonna hold the hands. The more bent your elbows are, the easier it is. The straighter your arms are, the harder it is. And you're gonna add a kind of a sit up or a reach forward. You can do this with a flexed spine. So notice that my upper back is rounded, or you can try to do it with a flat back. Okay, so experiment with that. This is round back. I'm working more of my abdominals, my front line. This is a flat back. I'm working my back line and my front line. Round back and flat back. Yeah. Experiment with that one. See how each of those feels different. They're both really good for you. Okay. We're going to switch to sideways, and then we're going to do some standing. There's not quite as many sideways movements, so I'm going to hopefully fly through these. So you want that anchor now at basically a 90-degree angle from you. Okay. You're grabbing both. Make sure you can still see me. Okay, great. Grabbing both. You can, again, kind of depending on resistance, you can either do the single arm or double arm. I'm going to show you, double arm meaning you're grabbing both of the handles. I'm going to show you with both handles. Depending on how far or close you are from the wall, that might not make sense. Okay, so facing towards that anchor, I'm going to pull away and rotate. So I'm trying to rotate my arms, my hands, my ribs, my head, and then I slowly come back to the center. Try to keep the arms straight out in front of you. So elbows are as straight as you can. If there needs to be a little bend in the elbows, you can do that, but notice it gets harder as you straighten the arms in front of you. We're just increasing that lever. Exhale to pull, inhale back to the center. Okay, keep moving through that. One thing to keep in mind here, are you rotating around your center axes, or are you shifting to the side as you pull? Can you just rotate around the center axes? We're using obliques, we're using chest, we're using back. So that would be spiral, front line, back line, and actually lateral line as well. If that's not important to you, don't worry about it, but I know I've got some anatomy nerds out there that might be interested in that. Okay, so that is a rotation. That's kind of a wood chop at shoulder. It's what we call a wood chop at shoulder height. I can start to add a diagonal into this. I can wood chop from high to low. So now I'm still pulling and I'm rotating, but I'm rotating more past that knee. Working the same areas, just different fibers of the muscle. Or I can do a high wood chop. So I'm kind of pointing up towards the sky and then back towards the anchor. Up towards the sky and back towards the anchor. Okay. If one arm makes more sense to you here, you can also be doing those one arm. In fact, did I add those? No, I didn't add those. So yeah, so that's another one. And we call this one drawing a sword, where you're basically doing the same movements. You could go high, you could go shoulder height, or you could go low. Okay, it's kind of similar to that reverse fly that we were doing when we were facing away, sorry, when we were facing, yes, away from the anchor. Okay, likewise, I can hold this arm out, and depending on how my resistance is for this bottom arm, I just let the band, so I just kind of slid the band towards this arm. Oh, that was going to be impossible. That was way too heavy. And I can add an adduction, meaning I'm squeezing my arm in towards the side of my body. This is really good for your lats. It's really good for your obliques. Exhale to pull, inhale, release. And this other arm is just stabilizing. It's working, this other arm is working, but it's really acting more as my stabilizer, so I can move my right arm. Yeah. And again, depending on your setup, you might have to adjust your chair or angle your chair. Great. So I'm going to show you, just making sure I didn't miss anything, and then we'll come to standing. I'm just going to show you one more. This is more appropriate for those of you out there that maybe have rotator cuff tears. I did a whole shoulder workshop, so I'm not really going to go very far into this. You could grab one of the bands, but I'm going to leave that band there for more exercises. So I'm grabbing my TheraBand now, and I've got both elbows tucked in, and I'm working on that shoulder external rotation. My palms are facing up, my shoulder blades are squeezing together, and I'm just trying to move my two hands as far away from myself, or as far away from each other as I can. Remember, you control the band doesn't control you. I don't want to see this. Okay, so you control that band, especially coming back inwards. So we call the eccentric part of the movement, and it is very important. Okay, for folks that are ambulatory, I'm going to show you a few exercises here. And by the way, and I can't remember if I said this in the beginning, you can do all of these exercises from a standing position. I can do my rows, I can do my flies, I can face away. So everything we just did, if you're able to, you can also do from a standing position. Okay, I am going to take a risk here. Don't do this at home if you don't have a good door, but just for the purposes of showing you these standing ones, you want your anchor to be at about ankle height. Backwards. Okay, so my door doesn't let me go lower on the other side, so I'm just switching it to the side. You're going to want a yoga block or a stool. A yoga block can be not quite as steady. I'd recommend a stool or something of that sort. And you would slip on your ankle cuffs. Okay. Sure, this is at a good height. I'm going to point this down just so you can see my lower body. You don't really need to see my upper body. If you've got good balance, awesome. If you need some help, you can grab a walker. You can grab walking sticks or a foam roller to hold on to, okay? So you're going to be doing, make sure this is at a good angle here. Maybe I'll move you back. Okay. So you're going to be doing these from 3 different angles, just like we did for the upper body exercises. Okay, so the reason you don't have to stand on the yoga block, but the reason I like to stand on the yoga block is to give your moving leg more freedom, okay? So again, make sure you have something to balance if you need it. Bring yourself an appropriate distance away from the door. okay? And then we're gonna work on stabilizing that one leg on the block and kicking the other leg forward. I'm working quad on this side, hip flexors, and front line. On my other side, I'm working front line, back line, lateral line. This is one of those movements where you're kind of working all of the areas of the lower body and also many areas of the core and the abdominals. So you're killing a lot of birds with one stone. That's not a great metaphor, but you know what I mean. So we're doing a lot here. You can also bring that more into hip flexion, or sorry, knee flexion, pulling that knee up. You can add a tap to the opposite leg. And again, if the yoga block feels kind of intimidating, you're just doing this on the floor. Okay. Or you can go straight leg. You can also bring that more into kind of a soccer kick. So adding a little bit of external rotation as if you were passing a soccer ball forward. It just adds a different hip orientation for that swinging leg to work with, okay, which can be really good for your hips. You would do both sides. I'm gonna go ahead and flip and face the other way. Notice the cuffs just kind of naturally rotate on my ankle. You might have to adjust that if your ankles aren't as slippery as mine. Okay, and then likewise, we're gonna do the same exact thing. Coming now, just facing the other way into hip extension. I'm facing the anchor, I'm stabilizing on one leg, and I'm kicking back. I can add more of a walking motion where I'm kicking my heel up towards my butt. I can just stay with hip extension. I can do hip circles, going both directions. Okay, so you have a lot that you can play with there. Last couple here. I'm gonna face sideways. We're, again, working still outside and inside, front and back muscles of the hips. And I'm swinging that leg out to the side now. Just adding a little bit of resistance. Okay, you can also bend the knee and bring it up and out to add in some of that hip external rotation, meaning the hip is rolling out. I would stay on that side, and then I would take the back leg. Now we're working the inside muscles of the leg, and I'm kicking back behind me. If doing these exercises with a band feels not accessible for you, do all of these same exercises without a band. Okay, you don't have to have resistance on your hips to be working the same muscles with all of these movements we're doing. Remember, if I face this way, I also have to face the other way. So I get the outside muscles for the other leg and the inside muscles for my left leg. Okay. I'm just going to show you 3 more exercises here. Okay, for those of you that can, when I did this Tuesday, I got stuck, so I'm gonna do my best to not make a fool of myself, but no promises. Okay, so I've got that anchor just so you can see. I've got that anchor just a little bit below the door handle. It could go higher, again, just for safety purposes, because this door makes me a little nervous with the gusts of wind that come through. I'm gonna leave it like that. Okay. You would make this easier for yourself to get into. You would first transfer down onto the ground. You would put the cuffs on your ankles, and then you would connect the bands to your ankles. This is for folks who are ambulatory. If you have someone there to assist you, this is a really nice way to get the legs moving also. I'm actually going to give you more of a side view there. We'll see if that works. Okay, so lying down, I've got my head lined up with the anchor of the door. And then I can do a full leg series here. I've got my bands crossed, but you would do better than me. Okay. So again, having somebody assisting you, whether they're helping you move your legs or whether you're moving your legs, this is a really nice way to get more fluidity and movement through the hips, the knees, and the full legs. Okay, so I'm just starting, both legs are coming straight down to the ground. I can move that more into alternating, so kind of marching legs, one leg up while the other goes down. What's really nice, if you have someone assisting you here, the amount of work that they're doing is minimal. Right now my legs are completely relaxed. I'm using the yellow band. This is the lightest band. So the person that would be moving your legs, their job isn't that hard. They're just basically assisting you. And of course, you're thinking, how much of this movement can I do without them? So you're trying to get as much movement as you can. You can do circles, you can do scissors, coming in, coming out. Okay. You can get creative. You can even bend the knees if that is accessible for you, and kicking out. You've got a whole world of exploration for these lower leg exercises here. Those are some of my favorites though. When I am working with folks with spinal cord injuries, or or any other neurological deficits for that reason, this is in our repertoire 100% of the time. Not only does it get people connected to their abdominals and their core, but it helps open up their hips and it gets things flowing and a little bit fluid. So if you can have someone that is helping you with that, I highly recommend that. If you are able to do it on your own, go for it. And that is it. Make sure, I don't think I missed any. I think that's it. We'll take any questions.
Okay. Thanks, Rachel.
Mhm.
First question, not surprisingly, someone is asking about the hardware that they have in their back, and which of these exercises should they be most cautious about?
Yeah. So for folks with primarily hardware through their thoracic vertebra, okay, so anywhere in that rib cage, any of the movements where we were doing rotation, whether it was the row or the punch, you're going to want to limit. And how much you limit depends on where your hardware is. This rule goes for anybody with hardware anywhere in their vertebra, whether it's cervical or thoracic or lumbar. Keep in mind, and this is applicable for everything that we do in these workshops and everything that you do movement wise, wherever with primarily rotation based movements, let's say you're fused from T2 to T10, your thoracic vertebra were designed, they fit together, they were designed for rotation, the way that the bones quite literally fit together. If you're fused in your thoracic vertebra, which is the part of your body that does rotation, your lumbar doesn't really do rotation. Your lumbar vertebra do flexion and extension. If you're fused to T2 to T10, you only have T1, and then you only have T11, T12 to take that rotation. So what we often see is if you overdo that kind of rotation, it dumps into the vertebra above and below your hardware, and it can wear those areas down faster. Okay. You can move more from your neck, you can move more from your hips if you have that there for you. And rotation is okay. And if your hardware is maybe only 3 or 4 levels, then yeah, play with that rotation. But you definitely don't want to do anything that's forced beyond what we call like your soft end range is. So when you feel that you can't rotate anymore, don't force it. So you're just playing in a range that is suitable for that rotation above and below. So the rows with the rotations and the punches rotations, you would want to be careful of. If you're fused in your lumbar, we only did the one with flexion where you were doing the sit-ups when we were facing away. You might want to be slightly careful with that. If you're fused through all of your lumbar, that's usually not the case. So that exercise should be fine. And then really all of the exercises, your spine and your pelvis are in a neutral position, so it's not too much of an issue.
Okay, great. Next question. Person has had a rotator cuff surgery 1 year post, asking which of these sets should they be kind of focusing on in order to continue with the rehab of that shoulder.
Yeah, I would say first, I would recommend for this person to go back and watch my shoulder workshop. It was the workshop. I'm losing track because we're doing a lot of these. It was either last session or the session before. I talk a little bit about rotator cuff tears, and I show you the rotator cuff and how it works and what kinds of exercises to do. Start with that workshop. Once you've taken that workshop, when you come here, do whatever movements are pain if so you're a year out, which is a for the most part a pretty safe amount of time where, again, for the most part, this is a generalization, we're hoping that people have completely restored their mobility and their strength. If that's not the case for you, limit any ranges, especially the ones that are kind of more overhead or maybe far back behind you. Limit any ranges that don't feel right, that are either uncomfortable or painful. Everything else that we're doing kind of in this range of motion, again, this is a generalization, you would want to get this checked, but for the most part, will hopefully feel okay for you. So yeah, just listening to your body when we're doing anything that gets more overhead or more reaching back behind you.
Okay. And folks, we have had every single presentation of not only Rachel's, but everyone else recorded. So if you go to norcalsci.org's website, go under the videos sort of tab at the top of the page. If you just sort of hover over it, you're going to see a link for the virtual educational videos. And all of Rachel's videos, particularly the one that she's been mentioning a couple of times tonight, the shoulder one, are recorded there, and it would behoove you to really educate yourself about some of the things that she covered. So Rachel, speaking of shoulders, obviously with spinal cord injuries because of the wear and tear on shoulders, thanks to pushing wheelchairs transferring, that's always kind of a huge kind of worrisome part of our anatomy. From tonight's sort of exercises, are there sort of any top 5 that you would recommend for people to really adopt on an ongoing basis to just help strengthen and maintain the integrity of their shoulders?
Yeah, Franklin, that's a great question. So all of the exercises that I mentioned in the beginning, there was maybe 7 or so. All of those exercises where you're facing the anchor. So I would recommend rows, a row with a rotation, the flies, and maybe the overhead flies. Any, or even the snow angels, any one of those where you're facing the anchor and you're working your whole back line, that area in between your shoulder blades, upper back, mid back, low back line, lats from pulling, any exercises where you're facing the anchor, I would stay with those. And not only would I stay with those and would I do those every time that you do this resistance band workout, but if you only have 5 or 10 minutes, do those facing the anchor because those are the most important for opening up the chest and the collarbones and the shoulders and strengthening your back, the areas that are often ignored and the areas that are often elongated, meaning they're overstretched because we're in a flexed forward position because that's what that is the what it's where society puts us and where society puts you when you're in a wheelchair and you have to do everything in front of you. So yeah, face the anchor and do those 6 to 7 exercises in the beginning.
Great. Okay, next question. With someone who's learning to walk again and can't extend their leg back, what exercises do you recommend to strengthen those posterior muscles with little strength in standing?
Yeah. The series that I did lying down just now are awesome, awesome, awesome for for muscles on the back of your leg, for glutes and for muscles on the back of your leg. So I was doing that exercise on a yellow TheraBand where you saw when my legs were relaxed, they were about a 45-degree angle or so. If I wanted to work more of the muscles on in my back line, I would bump up that TheraBand maybe 1 or 2 levels up because now it gets harder for me to push my legs down. So I'm still working all of those posterior, all of those muscles on the back, but I'm not doing it in a standing position that is either impossible, inaccessible, or unsafe. So working on this series can be really helpful, and you can play with the resistance of the play with the amount of the resistance band. Likewise, like I said, in standing, if you're able to safely stand, you don't necessarily have to have the resistance band on your ankles. You could just stand. You can work on single leg standing balance. You can work on weight shifting left to right. Before that would be first, and then you would come into single leg balance. Those movements are also going to be working the side, the back, and the front muscles of your legs and your hips. Again, that's without resistance.
Okay, those are all the questions for tonight. Thank you, Rachel. Once again, you did it, 2 presentations in 1 week. That's a lot of preparation, and you also got a good workout 2 nights in a row, or not 2 nights in a row. Thank you, everyone who tuned in tonight. As I mentioned, a recording of this presentation as well as Tuesday night's presentation for quadriplegics will be in your inboxes tomorrow morning. We'll include that link to the set of the resistance bands that are Rachel's favorites and she recommends. I put it in the chat field, but in case that you need to see them again, I'll put it in the email tomorrow morning as well. And again, the recordings, all of Rachel's past recordings are going to be on our website under the video section. And once again, Rachel has agreed to hold monthly, at a minimum monthly, presentations for us for the balance of the year. So she and I are constantly brainstorming what topics are going to resonate well with our audience. And I know this topic did, because we had well over 100 registrants for each of the presentations. So I know that there's a lot of sort of pent up demand for this. So thanks for doing this, Rachel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your evening and have a good weekend.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. See you next
Bye,
time.
Rachel.
Thanks, Franklin. See ya.